The seemingly secluded town on the border of the states was of no interest to anyone. It was losing its importance with each passing year as abandoned. Town asylums became more prevalent, but those who found themselves in it had to deal with the dark side of the town, a side that was far more dangerous than it first appeared. One such person was the protagonist of our story, John, who happened to be in this gloomy town in an attempt to escape a severe thunderstorm. On the first evening, it seemed to him that the entire town was enveloped in a veil of darkness and piercing cold, even though it was midnight. There were no lights in the city, and the street seemed as if no one had been here for a long time. John went to the local bar, hoping to find shelter from the storm there. It was dark and empty inside, but the bar was suddenly occupied by a mysterious bartender who began to speak to John in a strange and incomprehensible language. Suddenly, a stranger appeared out of the shadows and invited John to participate in a game of survival, where the goal is win or die. At first, John was sure it was a joke, but when they went outside, he saw that there were traps in all the streets, and every step could be his last. In the blink of an eye, he found himself in the middle of a circle where he had to fight other members of the game to stay alive. Each fight was more and more dangerous and brutal, but John could not give up the game, for it was the only chance for him to survive. Soon, John realizes that he has been held hostage by an intimidating group who are using the survival game for their own purposes. He learns about the secret and mysterious experiments being conducted in the dark basements of the city. Everyone involved in the game was a pawn in a big game where the most important thing was to survive at all costs. John realizes that he is trapped, and he needs to do everything he can to get out of this nightmare. He begins to plan his escape, but at every step, he is hindered by his rivals and the group's supporters. Each new trap, each new fight becomes more dangerous and violent. Finally, John finds a way out of the city, but he has to go through a maze of traps and dangers. At the last moment, he discovers that the entire city is a huge trap planned by scientists to conduct experiments on people and find out how they will behave in a forced struggle for survival. John has to fight his rivals and the scientists to get out of this nightmarish situation and return to his normal life. Finally, he manages to get out of the city and come to his town, where he remains forever changed after this horrific experience. He realizes that such experiments should never be performed on living people and is greatly relieved to get his life back to normal. When John arrives home, however, he notices that his house is half destroyed. Not understanding what has happened, he begins to examine his house and finds mysterious notes and bloody footprints on the floor. As he examines his house, John realizes that this is not just an accident, but part of a larger, sinister plan in which he has been held hostage. He begins to realize that he has been watched and controlled all these years. As John progresses in his investigation, he discovers that his friends and loved ones have also been attacked and brutalized. He begins to feel caged and doesn't know who to believe. Each new clue and discovery becomes more terrifying and dangerous. John feels that his life is in danger, and he must act quickly to solve the mystery before they get to him. Finally, John comes to the conclusion that all of this is because of his past, and he must expose his old enemies who have always stood in his way. He begins to investigate his past and realizes that it is his recent enemy who is trying to get back at him. John throws himself into a battle for his life and against his enemy, which becomes increasingly bloody and violent. In the end, he defeats his enemy, but he is no longer the man he used to be. His life has changed forever, and he realizes that he will never again be the same man he used to be. Despite defeating his enemy, John cannot get his life back to normal. He suffers from pets and nightmares about his past that haunt him day and night. He becomes withdrawn, avoiding human contact and spending most of his time alone. He cannot forget the horrors he experienced, and they continue to haunt him. In addition, he has lost his friends and loved ones who were victims of the war against his enemy. He feels lonely and isolated, and no amount of effort by his loved ones or professionals can help him cope with his problems. In the end, John cannot fight these demons of his past and decides to take the most extreme step. His death leaves those who loved him in deep shock and grief, and they are left wondering why he could not forgive himself and start a new life.